Good. Thank you very much, Carla, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation to join this class. It was actually 2009 when I was first here at the SVA on the other campus. We brought together 4 pioneering computer artists. We had Kenneth Knowlton, we had Lillian Schwartz, we had Kenneth Nelson, and basically they all talked in a panel session there, which Bruce was hosting for the project that we were doing at that stage. So it's a shame not to have Bruce with us, but I'm really pleased to be here. So thank you very much for the invitation. So as Carla was saying, the Lumen Prize quite recently established, 2011. But she also alluded to the fact that the history of computer art goes back some way. It goes right back at least to the 1960s, if not before. And the fact is that this art form has had several different incarnations. As technology has adapted, as it has changed, so different forms of art have been associated with the computer. You've got algorithmic art, for instance, using various programming techniques to generate images. You've also got a range of newer forms stemming from new types of 3D software. You'll also see augmented reality, you will see immersive forms, and actually various types of installations that require the computer to control them as well. And what I find interesting about the Lumen Prize is the range of different types of art that have actually been represented here. And in just 4 years, I feel that it's done extremely well to attract some major names from the digital arts field, and also, I think, to really raise the standards of the art and perhaps also the profile as well, which I think has always been Carla's aim, is to bring this to a wider audience. And certainly with the international scope of Lumen, which I think is also another strong part of its appeal, the fact that it travels the globe all the way from London to Shanghai by way of the States, by way of Europe. Last year we did Athens, we did Amsterdam, we did various parts of China. We then moved across to New York and probably Vancouver as well. So there was quite a range of places represented. And the Guardian newspaper in the UK referred to this as the world's preeminent digital art prize, which is always flattering to have that sort of recognition, but I will certainly sort of let that stand for a second. And the fact is, this was last year's show here. Sure, yes, it would be useful. Thank you, because I can see my notes. Brilliant. Yes, this was one of last year's exhibitions as well. The philosophy of the Lumen Prize is that with the rise of digital technology and the rise of digital projection particularly, could you actually fit an entire exhibition on a USB drive? Could you actually have something that's so portable that you could bring it from place to place without all the paraphernalia of a typical art show? As things have turned out, no, probably not. You still need a lot of... It still needs a great deal of background support, and we find especially that many galleries still need a lot of help when it comes to the digital. And it makes me think especially that some of the resistance perhaps in the art world to digital art forms is not necessarily a sort of intrinsic resistance to digital art itself, but rather the expertise needed to make it work. And even shows like in 2010, the Victoria and Albert Museum showed Decode, which was one of the first really major digital exhibitions in the UK. Quite some very major names were represented there. But so whenever I went along to the shows, I did several times, always you could guarantee at least 2 or 3 pieces would not be working. And the reason is that even at the V&A, they needed a lot of expertise to keep that show running. And that was a watershed show. I do recommend looking up on YouTube Decode at the Victoria and Albert Museum, looking at some of the antecedents. We have that in our background. Lumen was founded the year after that, and really was intended to bring, I think, digital art to a wider audience. And you can see here, in fact, this was a range of different places. This is actually in the crypt of a church in London, very near Euston Station. This is St. Pancras Church. And Lumen actually adapted very well to this sort of very underground, sort of intense environment, where in fact the digital forms worked even better underground in this sort of light. So what is Lumen? Well, a range of prizes, as you can see, all the way from your standard gold, silver and bronze for the 3 most highly rated pieces according to the judges' judgment. And then this year, the Other awards always change somewhat every year, and these are some of the types of award that we decided to go for. A creative coding award, for instance. Look at artists who are particularly involved in actually developing their own software, using algorithms, perhaps understanding the fundamental parts of the computer more fully, rather than perhaps just using existing software. Secondly, the Immersive Environments Award. So this is actually intended to encourage artists to develop larger scale works than simply using a screen. Works that could spill out into the physical environment. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen projection mapping, for instance. You've seen what that can do in terms of filling a three-dimensional space with different types of imagery. But we're looking to encourage that sort of engagement with the physical and the digital. The Performance Award also has some elements of that, but that was specifically tied to an opera company in Wales, the Welsh National Opera, who were interested in seeing what could be achieved perhaps in a more theatrical setting. The Creative Still Award, it goes back really to the early days of computer art to have just a single still printed image, but we still want to support that as well. And in fact, we've seen the composition of the works change over the years, that initially in 2011, a lot of the works that were submitted were actually digital prints. This is less the case now, but in fact there are still quite a lot of people interested in making creative compositions using Photoshop, using various types of montage. And then finally the People's Choice Award, for the which is voted for by the public who come onto the Lumen website. They look at the online exhibition. There's also one more award which is missing from there, which is the Founders Award. So this is Carla's own choice of work that she feels is deserving of mention too. So we will see all these works represented if I have enough time. These are our judges. So you can see that they represent quite a range of expertise from the art world as a whole, and also, in fact, from other areas too. But we think that we have a good range of judging talents to actually look at the visual and other aspects of these works. And here you can see one of the key facts of Lumen is the online gallery. And we always feel that it's important to be able to see the works both at a distance as well as being physically present, because we know that people can't necessarily do both. They can't attend the shows necessarily. But we're also very keen to emphasise that Lumen is not simply about online art. This is not just the only aim of the thing. It's rather to get it out there and to see it. And in fact, what we have this year, just talking about the international aspects of Lumen, we had about 500 entries from 45 different countries. Every continent, every inhabited continent represented. And from those 500 entries, then we have an initial judging session with a wider range of judges to whittle it down to 100 works. And then from those 100 works, we then choose 25 works, which are those represented in the exhibition as a whole. So we keep sort of getting down to sort of refining it down to a smaller number, and it's from those 25 works that we choose then the 8 prizes that are awarded. So we sort of get further into the works. So without further ado, I shall show some of the works that made it into the exhibition, and then go towards those that actually won prizes, just to give you a sense of the range of possibilities. This one here from Marcus West is called Fibonacci Image, because it's based on the Fibonacci sequence. And Marcus is perhaps a more traditional computer artist. He was in fact involved with the early Computer Art Society back in the 1970s. And he generates these various forms using Fibonacci as an algorithm to arrange the dots and to give them this very naturalistic but also mathematical form, because of course the Fibonacci sequence is found in nature and pine cones and other natural forms. And they are very pure in a sense. I think it's a very pure algorithmic form of digital art. And Marcus is certainly one of the sort of artists who is kept in a particular vein, rather like other algorithmic artists, like Jean-Pierre Hébert, for instance. This work is actually, it's a still piece that uses photography and composites from landscape paintings, and it creates then new composites based on them. It's called Landscape Representation, SA4 by Giulia Romano. This one is called Hyphae, and it's by Anders Hoff. Now this is another generative algorithm this time one that produces tree-like or river-like forms, and it's at a very high resolution, very large resolution, and this has to be exhibited really in printed form so you can actually see the detail therein. But even on a low resolution projection, you can just see how intense and detailed that can be. So we're quite interested in some of these organic forms, organic shapes. This is from Ryoto Matsumoto from Tokyo, and it's called The Reverberant Ambience of Interpretive Codes. And this basically uses a range of techniques and technologies, particularly paint-based, but also generative in there as well, just to suggest that sort of chaotic forms that come from our engagement with digital networks. This time-based work, it's called Trio, and it's by Beatrice Latigue. She's actually part of a larger collaborative group called Lab 212, based in Paris. And this is really a sort of minimalist form of video projection mapping. And it was actually created for the facades of the Place de la Paix in Montreal. As you can see there, it's actually something that we had to exhibit as a video because obviously we couldn't use the original because it was very much a location-based piece. I'm pleased to say, Anne Morgan-Spalter, sitting here, and these are actually, The World of Water is one of several video pieces that she's been evolving, really around a form of a warping technique that actually draws in different video sequences. I will, if I have time, show a short amount at the end. I have a few videos that I hope to show. But she likes to engage really both with traditional painterly techniques and then applying those painterly techniques to video. Through After Effects and through other software as well, really sort of joining the disciplines that she had from the past and then sort of moving those into the digital. And Anne has been engaged with digital art for some time and has also written on this too. David Moreton, an interesting example. This is only a still from quite an extensive visualization. David, as I should call him, being Spanish, he has synesthesia. And he's a genuine synesthete in the sense that when words are spoken, he actually sees colours and he sees images. And he's also a special effects artist who's particularly skilled with Houdini. And he has fused the two aspects of his knowledge together to actually produce for several different pieces of music, to actually produce these sound visualizations based upon the colours that he hears. This one is actually for the Finnish composer Rautavaara, who's written some very atmospheric pieces about the Arctic. And the nice thing, I think, is that this piece, Visus Sonitus, was actually played for Rautavaara, who's now sort of accepted it as a form of visualization of his music and has engaged David to produce other pieces as well based on the same thing. And I also hope to show a very quick video of that. If not, if I don't have time for the videos, you will find them all on the online exhibition page of Lumen, so you can track these down. But it would be, I think it's a piece. I've actually, on the basis of this, I've engaged David to work with me on a visual arts project that I'm doing at the moment. It's called Beauty as Here. I'll speed along. Particle Man by Glenn Marshall in Belfast. Rio Taxis by Alteria in Petropolis in Brazil. I'm just moving forward quickly. Squid Soup, very established digital artists from England, and they often use these forms, LEDs suspended in a physical space, but these are responsive pieces as well, using LED strands. And the long-established digital artist William Latham from Brighton, who's produced a lot of pieces based on games engines. He was also a producer of games as well. But back to the late 1980s, he developed algorithms to represent the ways that pieces of art could evolve. He thought about how can you evolve sculpture? How can you create a syntax of forms that you could breed together and create various new works? And they're often quite disturbing, very organic, and yet somewhat alive as well. And this one from Korea, from Sek Jun-ha from Seoul, is called The Platform of Suffering, and it's a Connect-powered piece that basically is mounted on the back. You may not be able to see it. There's a sculpture of a person praying, and it's about the sort of contrast and collapse between utopia and dystopia. But those are all pieces that featured in the exhibition. And we'll move on to, and this too, called Frequencies from Nicolas Bernier in Montreal. And I shall move very quickly on then to the pieces that won. And I will just take a few minutes over these, just to let you know which ones these were. So this was our Still Image Award by Philippe Vest from Denmark, and it's called Lundby's Coast. And basically, there was an original Danish painter called Lundby who painted the Danish coast, and this digital version takes what was a classic painting and reworks it through various types of code. It reassembles the image, it strips it down, and it sort of does various operations on the JPEG file to actually bring out the, well, of course, JPEG compresses images, so it sort of brings out some of those aspects of the underlying JPEG. Very pleased to show as well Scott Drave's work, Electric Sheep, which won the Founders Prize. And this is actually a computerized system for art making that perpetuates and sustains itself, and it has an infinite capacity for making and sharing new images. And Scott really considers this to be a conceptual artwork to demonstrate the viability of independently created machines, but I'm sure he will say a little more on that. And this actually pulls together a number of different techniques and technologies, especially computer animation, rendering, and also is very much based on open source software, which is the key part of Scott's concept, is that it should be driven by open source. Radiantscape from Chris Chung in Hong Kong is actually a visualization of Fukushima, and it takes data from the Fukushima radiation and turns it into a landscape, as it were, that you can explore walking through. But it's no simple game. It's actually really more of an attempt to experience and show the results of a Geiger counter going through the Fukushima landscape. And I think it's very powerful. It's really a way of interrogating data. A lot of these works are really about the visualization of data, but also understanding it in new ways. Porte, which is the Performance Award. This was actually Lab 212, so a collection of 9 French artists. And they set up this vast array of LEDs inside a church in Paris, with a piano at the center, a sort of a Yamaha piano that was activated by software. So the piano would physically play, but also would be playing without any obvious pianist. As it plays, various of the LED strands are activated throughout the body of the church. So by standing there, you not only experience the music, but you also have the sense of these blue strands just suspended there in the darkness of this very decorative Baroque building. And it has a great sense of presence, although I've only seen the video. This piece by the Canadian artist Michael Takeo Magruder, called A New Jerusalem, builds upon ideas really coming out of the Book of Revelations, and especially this idea of visualizing the New Jerusalem, which Takeo Magruder does through an Oculus Rift. So here you can see the projection that shows roughly the view that somebody would be having through the Rift, and it really builds up a series of visualizations of this space, really sort of rendered mathematically, and also taking Google Maps data of the present-day Jerusalem and reinterpreting that live as well. This piece is featured in several places, was also part of an exhibition on the Book of Revelation at King's College in London. This was the People's Choice Award, Woman Without Mandolin, and it's by an artist called Fabiano Mixo. And it takes Miriam Goldschmidt and reinterprets her in a very cubist fashion, but using live video. Each piece starts to pull away and sort of reinterprets the picture as you watch it. And again, really cannot be served by a flat image. You really do have to see the original video. It's extremely emotive, very moving, in a way that a lot of people might not associate with the digital. If there's one thing that digital is very good at, it's actually pulling parts of images away to reveal more things underneath. And I think this is particularly effective in that case. Golden Levin, winner of our Bronze Award here for the Augmented Hand series. This is a way to reimagine the visitor's hand as it's placed under a scanner. It actually reimagines the hand as it moves, scans the hand dynamically, and then sort of represents it. For instance, you can see the fingers growing there in a very unearthly and very disturbing way. This is a hallmark of Levin's art. Previously, he's had works like the Opto image isolator, which is actually just a mechanical eye that follows people around a gallery. Very disturbing. It sort of talks about looks at the way that some technological artworks may actually look back at you and respond to you in a whole range of ways. And this also just takes something rather familiar, your own hand, and makes it into something other. It sort of extends the hand, turns it into something else that you may not expect. Another French artwork, Metamorphy, this won the Silver Award. And it's actually a series of immersive projections onto a large sheet. It's a sort of piece of silk sheet that's translucent. So the point is, as you push against it, it not only responds and changes and feels the pressure on the sheet, but also changes the projections. The idea is to actually combine a tactile experience with the digital, but also to give some sense of being in a dream. Because, of course, this actually takes you somewhat out of the world that you're used to into something that's a very liquid and a very form-changing universe. And it refers to the notion of metamorphosis and ideas of change and succession and going beyond. And finally, our Gold Award, two British artists, Ruth Gibson and Bruno Martelli, who've been working together for a long time. They were originally called Igloo, but when they realised that many people were confusing them with sort of a variety of companies selling fridges and other things, or thinking that they actually made igloos of their own, they changed it to Gibson Martelli. And I have to say that when Yasha Reichardt presented the prize, in their absence, they weren't actually there for our unveiling, she referred to Gibson Martelli as a singular person. So, in fact, thinking that the artist was in fact just called Gibson Martelli. For a long time, they've been engaging with notions of dance through Ruth Gibson's practice, and then Bruno has been using his knowledge of games games engines, in fact, to reinterpret things, for instance, like the Quake engine. They made a piece called Swan Quake, which was actually about dancers using the sort of Quake first-person shooter instead, and sort of creating that as a landscape set in a dystopian version of London, or the version of London around them. So they really are interested in immersive forms, they're interested in interaction in art, and also ways that dancers can be incorporated. And Man A takes the notion of camouflage. This sort of splinter, sort of camouflage, black and white, was developed in the First World War as a way of breaking up the shapes of ships at sea. Although it looks very sort of striking when seen from a close-up, from a distance, it really helps to break up objects. And they looked at this sense of camouflage, and also the way that tablets and other handheld devices can make use of augmented realities through their cameras and through apps. So what happens is that when the camera sees the black and white image, it interpolates onto that the form of various dancers. And you can only see those through the eye of the camera, you can only see those through the tablet. And they change all the time, the app sort of regenerates them and moves them into various forms. This has been exhibited elsewhere, but also quite famously was actually in the window of Selfridges in London, the big department store. It was part of a display there as well. So it's had several public outings, but we felt that this piece really encapsulated a lot of the essence of what we would want from digital art. It's very engaging, it's both physical and digital, draws on very recent technology, but also harks back in many ways to earlier projects and earlier forms as well. So without further ado, I think that's the Lumen Prize of 2015 covered, and I hope there's something of interest there for you to check out. I don't know if I have time to show the videos, but perhaps at the very end I'll have a chance to run a few if we manage to save some time. Thank you.